Ladies and gentlemen, for this, I'm going to invite on stage Mr. Amol Raina, Senior ASE, India South Asia, GitHub Advanced Security. Would you be kind enough to please put your hands together and welcome him?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Really exciting to see such a august gathering. I'm sure you all enjoyed great sessions on generative AI and security. I am Amol Raina from GitHub, and I'm going to talk today on application security. I'm going to keep the agenda very short and sweet because we don't have much time. So I'm going to talk about the state of application security today, talking something on the challenges that we see with traditional approach of doing application security, and then how GitHub could help you overcoming these challenges. Mark Andreessen, a very famous entrepreneur, in 2011 made a statement that software is going to eat the world. While people at that time really thought, this is, they didn't really understand what he meant. But as we understand today, in the next 5 years, there are going to be 500 million plus applications and microservices that are going to be developed. And this is much greater than what Planet has really seen in the last 40 years. So really exciting times, a lot of digitalization, a lot of code being written. But this is really exciting time for the bad guys as well, because with more code comes in more complexity, bigger attack surface, more technical debt, more issues, more vulnerabilities, insecure code. So, bad guys, they'll have fun. So what's the real threat? Let's quickly look at it. Applications, as per Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report, applications have been the #1 threat vector in the last decade or so. In fact, more than 60% of the attacks that actually are successful attack your application layer. In the last few years, what we have seen is that credential leaks have become a #1 threat vector when it comes to cybersecurity breaches. Whether it was SolariGate incident that happened a couple of years back, or the recent one, from Uber, it was one of those credentials that was leaked by these people or IT admins, which then the bad guys got access to, and then these breaches happened. The ratio between security professionals to the developers is ever increasing. We probably see it more than 100 to a 1 ratio kind of thing. So while the traditional way of doing application security, this was kind of okay, but not as we look at doing, more coding and, getting into digitalization. Lack of knowledge has been voted as one of the main challenges for developers. Developers don't understand vulnerabilities. They don't understand security threats. So that's becoming a big challenge again. And what that leads to is remediation issues. So we may identify vulnerabilities, we may identify issues, but if we don't fix those vulnerabilities, it's as good as not doing anything. Well, you would say, okay, we already have so many tools available in the market, and they've been there for decades. But we still see a lot of challenges. I'm sure you would have heard about false positives, friction between developers and the security teams. There's always a challenge we still see. So why is that happening? The real challenge is the tools that are designed today are primarily for security professionals. And while they would use it as a manual tool or integrate that with a DevOps environment, they fail to integrate these tools with developer workflows. So what that leads to is basically developer going into different dashboards, different technologies, wasting a lot of time trying to identify and remediate issues and vulnerabilities. So what that leads to is basically bad developer experience, low remediation rate, and a bad experience overall. So what's missing is, as I said, it's developer experience. In fact, I was in one of the panel discussions last month, and one of the panelists came up with this beautiful word called as developer empathy. So while we are doing a lot for DevSecOps, application security today, but what we fail to realize is, do we really empathize with developers? Do we really understand the pain areas? Do we understand the concerns that they have? Why are they not able to remediate? Why are they not able to fix these vulnerabilities that we're presenting to them? Let's look at this challenge slightly in detail. Now, look at any enterprise, large enterprise. There are two teams with different motivations responsible for shipping software out of the gate. The first one is the development team, whose primary responsibility is to develop features on time and budget. So they get their requirement, they start building the application. And that is when the second team, security, with a different motivation altogether, comes into picture. And then they would use multiple different technologies, different tools to scan this code and throw all these thousands of vulnerabilities on developers. So now at this kind of a traditional model, the challenges that we really see, the first one is application security teams. They have to run multiple tools, multiple technologies. So different tool for SaaS, different tool for DAS, something for credential scanning, something for software composition analysis. It becomes a big challenge. They also need to filter a lot of false positives because these tools would really throw a lot of false positives toward the end of the development lifecycle. Triaging becomes a big issue. Complex reporting and tracking remediations. Integration of application security tools into your DevOps platform, trying to integrate them with your CI pipe or repositories. This entire process takes years, months to years, I would say, to stabilize. Let's look at the challenges that developers face. Now, for developers, because of those multiple technologies that they need to really look at, different dashboards, they need to context switch between these technologies. So a lot of time is getting wasted by developers. So they don't really get that conducive experience to identify and remediate vulnerability. So this is what is happening today as we talk. So what's really required is to build application security into developers' workflow. Rather than developers going to different dashboards, identifying vulnerabilities, if we could get all this together and present it to developers in their workflow in a single pane of glass view, that will really solve that purpose. I'm sure we've all been talking about shifting security left, all those who have been in the application security domain. Well, NIST presented this report where it stated that if you could identify and remediate a vulnerability very early in the development lifecycle, the cost of fixing that vulnerability will be 10 to 100 times cheaper than identifying and remediating it very late in the development lifecycle. So that's a thought that organizations are really going ahead with today. Let's quickly look at what's basically GitHub here to do. GitHub's approach is a very unique and a different approach from the traditional way of doing application security. We are focusing on developers. Our approach is because GitHub today is housed to 100 million plus developers. We understand the psyche of developers. We understand their pain areas. We understand their concerns. So we basically build a solution which can help developers identify security risks, threats in their workflows. GitHub Advanced Security, the solution is native to GitHub Enterprise and ADO. So it's a plug-and-play solution, no issues with respect to getting a third-party solution, trying to integrate that with the DevOps platform. And this entire process of application security is automated. I still see with a lot of banks and a lot of organizations today that application security is still done manually. A lot of up and down happening, vulnerabilities being identified, being mailed to developers. So with the kind of code that we are looking at, with the kind of agility which is required, I think this model will not work. What all can GitHub Advanced Security, the solution, do for you? The first area, I'm sure you would all agree with me when I say that today 70 to 80% of the code that forms composition of your software is open source. So it's a very critical area that organizations really need to look at, the open source dependencies and libraries that your developers are trying to get in. So that's the first area we help our customers with, software composition analysis. The second area is the custom code that is being developed by your developers. So trying to identify vulnerabilities in the code that is being written by your developers, that's static application security testing. The third area is secret scanning. If you remember, I spoke about credential leaks becoming #1 threat vector. So secret scanning is a very, very important area, and we help our customers doing secret scanning. I'm sorry, I'm running because there's a lot of time left. The first area is dependency review, which is basically looking at your open source vulnerabilities. So we have this tool called as Dependabot, which looks at all the dependencies and libraries coming in. It will look at the vulnerabilities, and it will also look at the license details. So I think license validation is becoming a big challenge for CISOs in the organizations today. The second technology is code scanning, the custom code scanning. So we basically acquired this company called as Semel, and by the virtue of that acquisition, we have one of the finest semantic analysis tool called as CodeQL. So CodeQL basically helps you identify vulnerabilities in the custom code. It basically converts your code into something similar to a relational database, and then we have a set of queries that we could probably run over this database to identify vulnerabilities. Something I would want to mention, I'm sure you would all agree with me that in application security, the biggest challenge today is remediation of vulnerabilities. How do you ensure developers are able to remediate vulnerabilities? So what's coming from GitHub Advanced Security is we're building a technology which will allow developers to auto-remediate. So developers don't have to do any remediation, it will auto-remediate all the vulnerabilities. So that's the roadmap that we have. Secret scanning, we help you identify any API tokens, hard-coded passwords, that could have been left behind in the repositories by your developers. So that is something which we do. This is the dashboard that we have. So security teams need to look at the dashboard and look at the state of the health of applications that they have. So this is a dashboard that we have, which basically CISOs can look at. We would also, I'm sure, I've been with DevSecOps for almost 9 years now. I think one of the requirements that generally CISOs come up with is, can your application security solution integrate with my SIEM? So that is what we do. We integrate with multiple SIM tools like Splunk, Nucleus, Sentinel, where in real time vulnerability data can be migrated to the SIM and that can be looked at by the SOC team. So quickly, I think I just have no time left now. Quickly, so this is the state of your DevSecOps that it needs to look at. So while the SDLC remains same, the security is primarily shifted left. What it does is basically helps developers in identifying and remediating vulnerabilities very early in the development lifecycle and within their workflows, giving them a single GUI basically, and helping them, basically with respect to, a better experience kind of. With that, I would kind of finish my presentation. I'm sorry, I've already taken more than 1 minute. Thanks a lot. I mean, any questions, probably we can take it, offline. Thanks a lot.